Hello. Hello. My name is Varvara Melnikova, and I've been invited to moderate this session about architecture now and tomorrow. It's a third session in Cartier Art Dialects. It's, frankly speaking, it's a little bit difficult to continue this session after the previous one. So, and it feels pretty much warm because of this light, but kind of lonely here. And can I ask you to do some, I don't know, can you clap for yourself that you're here and we're all healthy and support me, please? Thank you. Thanks. So we can begin our conversation. So the conversation about architecture now and tomorrow, it's kind of forever ongoing conversation which could continue, I don't know, thousands and thousands of years before and after I'll be here. But we limited with 55 minutes, and I would like to frame this conversation between, let's say, the obsession with the future promises and the power of now, the way how architecture could function between the physical and digital. I actually even ask myself how I can function between physical and digital. It's my first experience to moderate the session where I'm alone on a stage, and most of my speakers is online in Paris, Milano, Paraguay, and we have two other speakers who would do our participation in a video format. So shall we start with introducing our wonderful experts. Hervé Chandès, the director of Cartier Foundation in Paris. Please, hello. Stefano Baeri, architect and urban planner in Milano, the president of the Milan Triennale Foundation. Solana Benitez, architect based in Paraguay, Golden Lion Award winner at Venice Biennale 2016. So, and as I said, we have two speakers with a video format, Juni Ishigami, architect based in Japan, and Sarah Z, contemporary artist based in the United States. I hope they can hear us. So let's begin with three questions to Hervé. And Cartier Foundation, it's an incredible institution, but can you please open up, what is behind, what the idea was when you created this at the first time?
Yes, Barbara, good morning or good afternoon, I'm not sure. The Fondation is Fondation Cartier first. It's an art institution created by Cartier in 1984. The Fondation is based in Paris in a building designed by Jean Nouvel and created by Jean Nouvel in 1994. And the Fondation developed also international program with art institutions, especially partnerships we have with the Triennale de Milan, directed by Stefano Boeri, we share today, and with the Power Station of Art in Shanghai, China. So basically, we organize temporary exhibitions. We also develop a program of performing arts, and we publish books. All creative fields are invited at the Fondation. It goes from visual arts to sciences, and goes from fashion design to cinema. And we program shows of renowned artists or unknown artists. And for example, we have been the very first to introduce to the public outside Africa, African photography in the mid-90s. Also from the very beginning, we have been exploring theme dealing with different issues such as human migration, climate change, the notion of native land, languages, speed with the philosopher Paul Virilio, and many more. I have to say that I always enjoy provoking encounters between people and their different worlds that leads to a collective creation of projects. And like, for example, I introduced a Russian mathematician, Misha Gromov, with the American film director David Lynch, who create together a library dedicated to sciences. And so we work very closely with the artist by commissioning artworks for the Fondation Spaces. Solano here today would be happy, I guess, to share his experience with us. Be nice, Solano. Then we have a collection. We have a collection with it, which is composed of the artworks commissioned to the artist and exhibited at the Fondation. And right now we have two exhibitions, one dedicated to the master, the great Armenian film director Artavad Speleshian, who was trained in Moscow during the 60s. And the other exhibition is the American artist Sarah, who agreed to participate to this talk. And this summer we will unveil Damien Hirst's paintings. It will be his very first exhibition in France. Also this summer, something I really would like to add, also this summer we will present the Trees exhibition in Shanghai. This exhibition explores the world of the trees, their beauty, their intelligence, and the streets faced today with the massive deforestation. We brought together artists, botanists, and philosophers. So to me, it's a trees exhibition. It's a very good example of what we like to do at the Fondation, to meet with the audience, exploring and connecting different fields of creation and of knowledge.
Thank you. We have a presentation with the 10 slides, so I think we could show it all. And can I have another question to Hervé, please? It's just, I'm curious, you have this masterpiece by Jean Nouvel, and it's real masterpiece in terms of the architecture. And how are the artists and architects who you've been invited to do the exhibition inside of this building reacting on this? Do they like it, or do they annoyed that it's so masterpiece, and this, how it usually works with relations of architecture?
They play with the building. But to start, I believe it's very important to know that the building was commissioned by Cartier for the Fondation to Jean Nouvel. And it was the second museum project built by Jean in Paris after l'Institut du Monde Arabe in 1987 and before the Musée du Quai Branly in 2006 and way before the Louvre Abu Dhabi. And so the building was, the Fondation was created in 1994, and with the years the Fondation has become a masterpiece and an iconic monument in Paris. And also about the space, and I will speak about the relation between the exhibition, the artist, and the building itself. But about the building, I think it's important to say that it's not a neutral space. It's not a white box.
Absolutely.
And in the building you have the immediate feeling of singularity when you enter the Fondation. For example, the different layers of glass give a sensation of openness and flow because of the transparency between the city, the sky, the garden, and the building itself. Then you have the contrast between the two different exhibition space of the building. The ground floor, you have the transparent galleries with no walls. We call these galleries the nave. And the other floor, the basement level, it's the crypt that can become a cinema or a conventional gallery. So with these two spaces, Jean Nouvel conceive a relation between light and darkness, interior and exterior, open and introvert, day and night. So you have this dialectics between contrast and synergy at the same time. So these are the tools that we are given to us to conceive the artistic program. And so the aesthetic of each level floor gives a lot of possible sceneries for the artist, like a stage. And that gives the artist a wonderful freedom to create and to imagine, which can also bring some surprise sometimes. So because we don't have a total control of the relation between the exhibition and the building, that's what I find absolutely amazing. And this lack of control, and so the beauty emerging from it, come from the changes in the exhibition design and perception. Indeed, from the morning until sunset, the light plays different reflection on the glass galleries layers, and the exhibition is shifting all day long. So the visitors are trying to guess whether they are looking at an artwork, at the screen, at the garden. So this blurring feeling between reality and reverie, the different sceneries during the day and during the 4 seasons of the year gives the living dimension of the exhibition, as if they were alive. And that is what makes the Fondation Galleries unique for the artist, and I will add for the public.
Thank you very much. So, and my next guest will be Junior Ishigami, and before we're gonna switch to his video, usually architect's philosophy is speak the best by his work, and so can we see a few slides of his work, please?
Yes, and
Супер, давайте.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so it's Plaza of Kanagawa Institute of Technology, which is basically totally white and empty space where students is supposed to think about how time should be spent and rather than how space should be used. So I'm doing it much more slowly than you do in the slides. So if you stop it for a second, this is artificial garden, water garden, and it's in Japanese retreat. So if you ever will visit Japan, I think it's definitely worth to visit. I've never been neither, and I wish to do it sometime. So the next one, please. It's another one. It looks like a very old Asian thing, but in fact it's not. It's a restaurant and private residence, and it took 7 years for Ishigami to planning this before they constructed. 7 years, at least for Russia, it's like almost a life for the building. And the last one. Guys, the last one, yes, and the last one is based in Moscow, and he won the international competition for the Polytechnical Museum in Moscow, where he created 2 types of areas, museum park and classical museum. So now we're going to have a video with Ishigami, and it's going to take 7 minutes.
そうですね、現代テクノロジーが、建築の考え方に影響を及ぼすことっていうのは、当然あるように思っています。今のこのテクノロジーによって、世界中さまざまな地域とか狭い幅な人たちと、簡単につながれるようになったわけですが、その状況っていうのはやっぱり建築の考え方にも、大きく影響してきているんじゃないかなと思います。で結果、僕たちはいろんな人とつながったり、どこへでも行けたりとかっていうのが、少し前まであったわけですが、その状況こそが、今のコロナとか、そういうが瞬間的に世界中に広がったということも、考えられるんじゃないかなというふうに思ってます。でいろんな人たちと、いろんな文化、いろんな地域の人たちとつながることによって、僕たちの価値観っていうのが一つじゃないっていうことが分かってきてるんじゃないかなというふうに思ってます。でそういう意味で建築家が一つの考え方で一つの方向性を持って建築を作るということに限界が来ているというふうに思っていて、いろんな人たちの考え方とか、いろんな地域の文化とか、いろんな国々の風習とか、そういうことを含めてそのプロジェクトごとに新しい価値観を作り出すような一つ一つのその価値観、プロジェクトごとの価値観を汲み取って、その新しい価値観で建築を作っていくということが、これから求められていくんじゃないかなと思っていて、そういう意味ではこれからの建築家の役割というのは一つの価値観を世界観として世界を未来として思い描くのではなくてできるだけ多くの価値観の建築をできるだけ多くの形で回答として示していくことが必要なんじゃないかなというふうに思ってます。そうですね、僕は今モスクワで科学技術博物館のプロジェクトを今行っているところなんですが、このプロジェクトにもこのプロジェクトに関わっていく中で僕が考えていたことというのは歴史的建造物の増改築というプロジェクトだったんですが、その時にその歴史的建築物に現代的な価値観の構造体もしくは空間のようなものを取ってつけたというか全くその違う価値観として新たに付加するというような、そういうことを避けようというふうに考えてました。できる限りそのもともとあった空間に現代的価値観をどういうふうに見出していくかということを考えながらプロジェクトを進めていきました。結果的には増改築のプロジェクトではあるんですが、この古い構造体この古い建築物に何も新しいものを付け加えずに新しい価値観の空間を生み出そう、もしくは新しい価値観の空間を元の建築の中に見出そうというふうに考えていました。でそういうことで僕がその過去と未来をどうつなげていくかということを考えるときにはただ単にその現代的価値観を古い価値観の上に置くというのではなくて、むしろ古い価値観の中に現代的な価値観をどのように見出していくかということが大事だと思っていて、人間のその活動っていうのがテクノロジーの進化とか、そういうことはあるとは思うんですが、その現代的なその技術をその過去の価値観の中にどうやって内包していって過去の価値観をどうやって内包していって新しい世界の中に含ませていくかということが大事だというふうに思ってます。でそういう意味で過去と未来っていうのはもう気に離されるものではなくて、過去の中にも 未来の価値観っていうのが、必然的に含まれているし、未来の中にも当然その未来がその過去となりうるような、そういう可能性を含ましていくような、そういう考え方で建築だけではなくて、世の中について考えていかなきゃいけないんじゃないかなというふうに思ってます。
Well, thank you very much for watching this. And before I move to another speaker, I would like to ask my third question to Hervé about recent exhibitions and coming up exhibitions and the way how it's functioned between foundation, architecture, and art. Please, Hervé.
Yes, Barbara. Yes, as I said, the building has a very strong effect on the exhibition program. And that is why from the beginning, I have also worked with designers, some unknown at the time, like Ron Arad in 1994, Mark Newson in 95. And also, I'd like to mention his name, the Congolese artist, architect, Bodis Kingelez in 95. And also we worked with the great masters of Italian design, such as Alessandro Mandini, Andrea Branzi, or Enzo Mari. And I think they all enjoy playing with the building. I think every single one of them beyond any question of age or experience. And I also invited the architect Elisabeth Diller and Riccardo Scofidio to create installation for shows in 1999 and for another show, Native Land exhibition in 2008. And because we like to develop a long-time relationship with the artist, in 2014, Diller and Scofidio were invited to create at the Fondation an exhibition which title was Musing on a Glass Box. You see, with this title, you have it all. And I think it perfectly explains the building and everything I've just said. And we also use the building to introduce to the public a younger generation of architects, like 3 years ago, the Bolivian architect Freddy Mamani for his very first project outside Bolivia, or Gloria Cabral and Solano Benitez for their second project in Europe after the prize in Venice. And in 2018, we invited the Junya Ishigami for his solo exhibition at the Fondation. It was his very first survey in his life. And now the exhibition joins the Fondation Cartier's collection. So these 3 exhibition projects were also pure architecture. I think for me it's important to mention that since the 3 of them actually built in the spaces. So the whole process was very architecture, if I may say. We had the construction validated by consultant. And so we can say that we practice architecture at the Fondation like Russian dolls, something like that. And this to say how the Jean Nouvel building and the garden are sources of inspiration. And to conclude, I will add that this lack of control and so the beauty emerging from the building, from the changing in the exhibition design, are very inspiring. And indeed, from the morning until sunset, the light plays different reflection, and the exhibition is constantly shifting. So this is what I can say today between the relation about the relation between the exhibition program and design and architecture.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us. And our next speaker will be Sarah Z, and it's American contemporary artist and sculptor. Can we show also a couple of slides of her recent workplace? So it's exactly Fondation Cartier where she did the recent exhibition called Night and Day. And also she created a mobile app with AR technology called Night Vision 2020. So if you want, or if you have Wi-Fi, you could actually download it and see how she could use it. So can we start with the video of Sarah, please? In the exhibition now in today, and it's really interesting experience. So if you want it, you could try it. And now we're going to have her video where she will share her vision and her thoughts on our questions. Stefana, Solana, Hervé, please be with me still. So we're going to have one video and then we're going to have our live conversation. Please, guys.
So this is something I thought about, even before the pandemic with my students. They often would have, would be buying materials online. So they'd say, I want something red, I want something fuzzy. This is for a sculpture. And they would receive it, and it wouldn't be the red that they thought the red was, and it wouldn't feel the way it seemed it would feel in the digital. And that moment of finding this kind of gap between what is a digital reception of something and a physical reception of something is something that we're constantly negotiating, we're constantly making sense of, and it's just a real part of our experience. And it's that in-between space, it's this kind of hybrid language that is real, and more real for the younger generations. And the younger you get, the more they're kind of indoctrinated into a new kind of language that is really part of their everyday functioning, whether it's ordering food online rather than smelling it in the restaurant when you walk in and saying, that's actually what I want to eat. So they're really learning a kind of language that incorporates both.
Please pay attention to her background, because she's shooting in her studio, and behind her is actually huge paintings, which is her ongoing work.
Not being there. One of them, the most primary one, was sound. So the idea of a surround sound, or a sound that creeps up on you, or the volumes, you completely lose that. It completely flattens in the video experience, and that's something we tend to prioritize the visual. And so that idea of a kind of environment of sounds around you was something I totally changed on site. I changed all the volumes. I did a sound piece outside so that when you came into the building, the whole piece would be blurred into real sound and the sound of the piece. And I also realized that the videos needed to be both on the floor and the ceiling, so that when you entered that world, you were entirely surrounded in three dimensions in that space, and it encompassed you. And that was something I did not figure out until I was on site and saw it there. The other thing I will just say, the last thing I'll say, because you asked about the architecture, was that architecture is incredibly relevant in that it really is an architecture of mirage, of screens, of shifting planes. So it really gave to this idea that's very central to the show of how do you make a space where you are constantly trying to navigate your space or orient yourself in space through these shifting planes, through these mirrored planes, through reflections, because you have all of these sort of moving glass walls and these fragile, thin kind of membranes between what's indoors and what's outdoors in that space. So it's the Jean Nouvel building is a really beautiful building to try and play with this idea of our experience of the world as being these shifting screens of looking at our phone, looking at a billboard, looking at our computer, and then looking at our room, and how we're constantly in this dialogue between what is on a screen and what is in real life. My own experience is that, from having studied a little bit of architecture, I found that much of architecture was philosophical, was in discussion, but we wouldn't get to actually building much later in that process. So the language was highly developed, the philosophy was highly developed, but it's a physical profession where things are built and last in space, and that part of it seemed underdeveloped because it came so late in the game. Whereas in art, when you studied art, you would put an object in front of the professor and it would be discussed, and you couldn't argue it away. It was a thing that was there, and it had a kind of presence that was either working or it wasn't working. And I think one of the things that's interesting to me about the process of architecture is that if you know the programming, the digital programming tools to build architecture, I think that they can be an Achilles heel for the profession, because there are so many tools that are made before they're needed. So the hammer was created, because it needed to use the nail to hammer in, right? And we needed the hammer, we needed the nail, they needed each other. But I think when you look at a lot of architectural design, you see, if you know the tools, you see the push-pull tool being played with, but not for a purpose. And so I think a lot of the tools in anything, in your iPhone, there's so many tools that go beyond the basic need, that I think architecture, both in terms of design and purpose in the next century, needs to really think about necessity and not using all the tools at hand that may not have been created because of necessity, but because they were created because it was an amazing thing you could do digitally. But that didn't mean necessarily that it was necessary to build a great building, and a building that really worked for the needs of the next century. And then the last thing I would say, more positively, I think that there's a really interesting place for architecture that incorporates the idea of uncertainty, of fragility, that questions monumentality, that really deals with things that being precarious, being things more ephemeral, and how that is actually knitted into a building. Something that has had a fluidity, that can move quickly, that is lithe. Those are ideas I think that will be important for architecture in the next century, given the presence of the digital. And that is a very exciting idea, because I'm not sure that in the past centuries that has been always so frontal, and in certain movements certainly it has. I think the center of architecture has a few questions. One of them, I think, is why build? To slow that down, that idea of do no harm, especially with the environment, especially with, architecture, the kind of architectural monumentality of, spaces that maybe don't need to be as big, as grand, as, which immediately has the need for the consumption of energy, the consumption of heat, of natural resources. So why build, I think, is a really important question for our next generation, and the necessity of building and the purpose of building, not only because of to mark a space sculpturally with architecture, but also to go back to these very basic ideas of, what kind of social environment does a building, create? What kind of purpose does a building create other than physical? So, one of the interesting buildings to think about in the next century is the library. The library is so specifically changed in its needs because of the digital, because of the lack of the need for storage, and that radical reshaping of that idea as a space, a place where information is shared, information is stored where it's archived, but also a place where you have a communal space to enter the space of the mind, to enter the space of books, even if they're digital books. How do you create that? How do you create that public space, given the fact that it has totally different needs in terms of physical, digital space as storage? So those are the kind of places where these questions become, I think, really interesting.
Thank you, Sarah. So, and before we're going to do the live discussion with Stefano and Solana, we have video, and it's just a couple of minutes with Russian students, and they ask the questions. So let's hear the questions.
Добрый день, меня зовут Петр. Я студент 4-го курса архитектурного факультета СПб ГАСУ. Что, на ваш взгляд, нужно сделать, чтобы реанимировать союз архитекторов? И не могли бы вы вкратце рассказать про подобные организации в вашей стране?
Briefly tell us about such organizations in your country. What the new Union of Architecture should be like, and what should young architects do to cooperate with each other? Hello, my name is Sava Fedoseev. I study at Stiglitz Academy at the chair of metal craft. I'm a blacksmith, basically. I worry a lot about the historical image, the historical spirit of St. Petersburg, the imperial capital. I see how neon signs appear on the historical buildings. I see the construction of huge glass towers, and we are about to have Moscow City here. How can we preserve the historical spirit and authenticity of St. Petersburg in modern times without rejecting cutting-edge technologies? I think it's an extremely relevant question. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sofia. I'm a student at the Department of Theory and History of Art, St. Petersburg State University of Industrial Technologies and Design. My question is as follows. Big cities are growing fast, and the decay of architecture is observed because fast construction is prioritized, but the creation of a single architectural environment and style is fading into insignificance. What is your attitude to this trend? Do you think that it's necessary to fight against it, and if yes, then how?
3 questions from the students. One was about the community, another one was about how to work with history and preservation issues, and the third one was about the conflict of big cities. And Stefano, Solana, I don't know, my hugs. If to pretend that we're all here and Sarah was here and she mentioned this question, which I found very interesting, and it would be great if you contribute to this, like, why build? And Solana, shall we start with you?
Thank you, Barbara. Can you hear me well?
Yes, fortunately, I can hear you well.
I hope, yeah. Okay, all the questions are very interesting. I think I want to use some kind of dyslexia to explain my vision of the role of the architecture in the future. We name our discipline like architecture, but I think the next steps can be architecture. It's a procedure to make sense. How can we live? How can we live all together around the planet? And how can we use our resource to create, to protect the life, to protect the life of the people. That's why Back to the Future is back to the sense, back to the, like, it's a moment like shipwrecked, and we need to make some inventory about what we have to protect the sense of our discipline. And the sense of our discipline is built to protect. And if we return to that sense or that path, we are in the start of new opportunities to live better altogether. I trying to explain this kind of things. I want to show you some project and trying to explain what we are doing now, even in this moment of pandemia around the world. You can put the presentation, please. It's okay. You can see? Okay. This is a particular place. It's in Oaxaca, Mexico. It's a compost pavilion in a place named Casawabi. It's a foundation made by Bosco Sodi, a Mexican artist. And how can you see here, the place is absolutely surrounded for a middle forest near to the ocean. And all these vegetables parts come to here, to the interior of the pavilion, to transform the leaf and some arms, etc., in compost material to fertilize new again the gardens and expand the possibility of the vegetation. And that's why we imagine how can we use everything with the same idea. It's not a composition, it's a composition. We try to use every single material in a new way to transform and produce this pavilion. That's why we use, for example, columns like the lights column of the street to support the street lights, and we use wires to hang a curtain wall, and all of these materials are made reusing the initial material. Broken bricks, broken columns, broken everything, even the wires support the possibility of to make the curtain, and how can we rename the space where the vegetal material transform the opportunity of the material, and again try to return in a absolutely changed way, but to produce better conditions, to grow better, to have more fertility, etc., etc. And this a simple curtain wall. It's only a wall hanged by this structure, and with this we try to make. We thought this is the way how can we restart to see and use our architecture, decor, to support other opportunities, not only use and produce the same catalog of material. That's why our thought about the future is the opportunity to make a healthy society, healthy in opportunity of resources, and how can ordinary people can even build with ordinary material, even considered trash material. that is an approach to start a conversation with Hervé and Paolo. And Stefano, sorry.
The voice to Stefano. Can I give the microphone to you, and please share your vision about why build in such, sustainable issues as we have right now.
Yeah, so I share the screen, Barbara, thank you. I'm so happy to see you. Solano, you have to close, otherwise I cannot share my screen.
Okay, sorry.
So great.
Okay.
Okay. Hope you see it. Okay. So, do you see it?
No.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Okay.
I see.
You see, I don't.
Okay. You don't? Okay.
Guys, can you tell me, do we have it on the screen, or it's only me who doesn't see? Okay. One moment, please. Okay. I think, yes, Stefano, we managed. Please. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you today. So basically, just to answer what I believe that basically what we have to do as architects, designers, is to anticipate the future, to be more precise, to anticipate the spaces where we are to plan to lead in the future. And in a moment like this one, where we are feeling, let's say, a sense of fragility, which has become stronger and stronger in the last months, this capacity to anticipate the future is more and more difficult, since we really don't know, let's say, how we can plan to see and then compare the future. So we are experiencing a very, very delicate moment in our also life, but also in our professional life. And you know what I think is that an architect has to be always schizophrenic. An architect has, at the same time, in the same moment, to be extremely inclusive and extremely selective. That's a picture you see. This is Joseph Beuys, 1902, in a Castle Documenta. And Beuys came with this amazing idea to gather 9,000 stones and basalt stones, and then transform every stone in a tree, in an oak tree. And then she started to plant 9,000 oak trees over in the public square, in the roads, in the street, in the courtyard of Castle. And in 6-7 months, he changed Castle. So I believe this idea of metamorphosis, the idea of how we can ask living nature to help us to change our habitat, is one of my obsessions. And I believe we have to cultivate obsessions, and always we have to try to balance this necessity to include what other discipline, what other cultures, what other tradition does, like contemporary art, skate, and our parallel necessity to design a space. That means to select. That's the amount of information from idea of images coming from all over the world to arrive finally into one unique spatial configuration. It's a very cruel process. So we have to combine this, let's say, necessity to open the world, to open the future, to see all the possible futures, and at the same time to go in the direction to select the future in one only dimension, one only configuration. So this schizophrenic, simultaneous, let's say, balance between inclusion and selection, it's what makes our profession so difficult and so passionate. And I'm just going to show you what something we do in terms of declining this obsession to make everything green, or to, let's say, use trees as a basic component of our life. That's something that we are doing in Cancun, Mexico. It's a forest city. for under 30 million people, 1,000 people, and with 7 million trees surrounded by a system of solar panel. And here the concept is a city which is composed by 7-6 epicenter, where you can experience life using all what you need in 15-20 minutes time. The second experience in Genève, we have been asked to imagine how we can imagine Genève could grow, and we have proposed this idea of transnational metropolis that together with Annecy, which is in France, it's creating this archipelago, this ring of urban villages. But what makes this proposal, in my opinion, interesting, that at the center of the metropolis, at the center of this new metropolitan environment, we don't have a square, we don't have a monument, we don't have a church, we have a mountain. A mountain with its meant of biodiversity. So the mountain, a natural present, like a hill, like a lake, which becomes the center of a city, the center of a metropolitan environment. And the same concept we are developing in Tirana, in Albania, where we are trying really to imagine how a new part of the city could reflect the necessity to, let's say, a 15-minute city, where a city you can experience, have what you need in a moment of 15-20 minutes or for 100 meters long. And what we are doing here is, for instance, to work on transforming roofs. Roofs will become what courtyard were in the last century. So space for semi-public life, for co-working, for habiting, for small agriculture. And then just to enter in another, at a different scale, at the scale of the building, you know, this is what we have done in Milano. Basically was roof. We started 15 years ago, but finally it was 9 years ago. And it's 2 towers with 21,000 plants. We have worked a lot in this last month to replicate. And what makes this, let's say, reinterpretation of this typology interesting is, for instance, what we are now doing in Eindhoven. This is the first social housing, vertical forest. So it's a vertical forest affordable for everybody, with a very number of plants and trees. It will be rented for young couples, and the cost of construction will be drastically cut and framed to prefabrication and other things. And that's something that you do also in China with another social housing building with plants and trees in Guan, nearby Wuhan. And just to conclude and to, let's say, go back to this obsession, that's a building that we have proposed. We have won a competition together with Liz Diller and Scofidio in Milano just a few weeks ago. And the place is the same as the vertical forest, but we have tried to propose something of different, the composition of architecture and living nature. In this case, we went from, let's say, this kind of romantic maintenance of the forest, of woodland on the facade, to something which is more rational. If you want the idea to go back to the notion of Italian garden, Giardino Italiano, where you have this rational sequence of superimposition of different kinds of vegetation. And working with our botanists, what we are trying to imagine is a building that mirrors the change of time, so can change its shape, change its color in different seasons of the year. And that's what we like more in this kind of building. So its capacity to be reflecting time. And another thing which is quite interesting is that the building will be only in wood, so it will be built in timber. Oh, thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you. I guess the answer is basically we definitely should build. And I would like to welcome on stage Janina to ask the question to...
Thank you. It's fine.
Sorry.
In fact, it's really what I promised to students, to ask at least several questions which
yes,
we got
please,
online.
Let's do this.
So can we go back to our speakers?
Yes, guys, can you...
It was my dream to talk directly to Stefano Boeri, please.
Let's make the dreams come true. Okay.
Hi, Hervé. Hi, Stefano. Hi, Solano.
Guys, can you see us?
Some short questions from our students to you. We still have several minutes. Stefano, the first question to you. How lockdown and remote work can affect our attitudes toward housing architecture and the need for huge office clusters?
Well, I think it will change a lot. already changing in one way. I feel a hiccup. Maybe you have to close my microphone. So just imagine how we can, let's say, introduce new element when we have to imagine a place where we are used to work. So office space, for instance. So office space will no longer be let's say an addition of individual workplace where we're used to have our desk and our personal computer, because basically what we are going to do is that we have learned to work everywhere. So we become a device which is connected with our body. So probably office space in the future will be more and more collective environment where we are sharing experiences that we have elaborated and developed by ourselves in other parts of the city. So this can drastically change also let's say, the commuting between city, historical villages, city and peripheral environment. And this change will like that. So, but what I'd love to underline now is that what we are going to see in the next future is not a revolution, but it's an acceleration of what was already happening before the pandemic. The pandemic, it's some way amazing because it's such a pervasive and sudden event who, at a certain point, has pushed humanity to accelerate some trends that were already present in the past.
Thank you, Stefano. And next question, Hervé, to you. What is the main driver of contemporary art? What can replace contemporary art?
Nice question.
Last question from students.
Frankly, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know. And it's always difficult to answer to such a question. I think we are always ready to discover, to learn, and I'm on my side, and even not talking for the foundation, for myself, the curiosity is my driver, and we'll see. For sure, I think it's really important to, I would say, to use the museum or to use the galleries, to use the foundation as a platform where different people can meet and can enter in conversation, like we have done in the past with philosophers, with Paul Virilio, with botanists, with architects, with different people. So for me, the key point is to stay being open to everything, and also not to be opportunist in a bad way, but trying to be opportunist in a good way, meaning for me to anticipate.
Another short but not easy question, I think, Hervé, to you. Should contemporary art have any limits?
I am not the best to answer. The artists are supposed to answer to that question. I am not the artist. But for me, it's no. But it's not a question of limit. I think it's a question of aesthetic, but it's another question.
Should architecture has any limits, Stefano, Solana?
Should contemporary art have any limits?
Can you hear us?
Sorry.
Okay.
Would you please repeat the question? Would you please kindly repeat the question?
Yes, Stefano. Should contemporary art have any limits?
Wow.
All the students.
Well, just yesterday we were discussing with Hervé and a very close friend of us, which is Emanuele Coccia, who is a philosopher. And what we were saying is that, well, we have understood in this last month that the limits that we are considering to see in different spheres of our life are over. So, well, let's do some example. We know basically the 5% of the universe. We know the 5% of the ocean. We know the 5% of the synapses that we have in our brain. Cities are occupying more or less the 5% of the merged land of the planet. Okay, that's okay, but this pandemic, this microbiological organism who came up from inside our body has transfigurated everything. So the point is not that we need to know the 95% of universe, 95% of seed of the land, the 95% of the brain. The point is that we don't know what is the 100%, what is all the entirety that we have to discover. So it's like to have, let's say, and as a world with no limits. We don't know where are the limits. So the dimension of what we don't know, the dimension, and now we are working with Hervé on that, on what we don't know, unknown unknowns. It's growing, 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 growing. And the point is that we have to learn to accept mysteries to be part of our life. We don't need to let's say, to feel anxiety to explore, to know, to control. Probably we have understood that our life has to become friendship with a partner, with uncertainty, and also with mystery.
Thank you, Stefano.
Thank you, guys. Unfortunately, we reached our limits of, our conversation, and thank you very much for being with us today. And guys, I hope it was inspired for you, and you will learn something new and interesting for, through our experts. And my personal hope that we will have the great and thoughtful architecture for now and for tomorrow. And we're going to move to the session number 4, which will be about transformation of art with Ekaterina Inozemtseva. And we're going to have a break in 5 minutes and be back. Thank you very much.
Stay with us.